Going to call to order. Thank you, Maria. I'm going to call to order the Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, May 2nd. This meeting is being audio and video recorded, and I will read the script. We are using Zoom for this meeting, which allows for the public to participate in meetings as an attendee. The chair can request that members of the public provide their names for purposes of keeping accurate minutes of the meeting. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique to the meeting. It can be found in the description of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed for the meeting. Attendees will be joining in listening mode. They can click the raise hand button if they wish to speak. I will call on those who have raised their hands in the order they were raised, and all questions should be directed through the chair. As a preliminary matter, this is Denise Cronow, Chair of the Finance Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative, starting with Peter Schaefer.
Here.
Jeremy Bloomer.
Here.
Stephen Morey.
Here.
Jill Veith.
Here.
Thank you. I only have one screen showing, so I don't think anybody else is on a second screen. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative, starting with Libby Gibson.
Here.
Megan Trudell.
Here.
Brian Turbot.
In attendance.
Maria Besheva.
Here.
Leslie Snell.
Here.
Susan Carmel.
Here.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon. This open meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ooh. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment for this meeting of the Finance Committee, convening by video conference on the Zoom app. It's a lot. Okay, I'm just going to keep moving here. This is very much the same. I will introduce each meeting speaker on the agenda. I will then ask the members to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Yes, and for items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. And each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. There you go. Okay. I am looking for an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second, may I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, Peter,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Stephen. You're muted, Stephen, but I heard, I saw your lips move. Joanna,
Aye.
Jill, are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay, you're on my second screen and I can't see you. So,
Sorry.
okay, that's all right. No, it's not your fault. I'm stuck on my iPad, which I normally don't use. Okay. All right. I am going to open and Denise, I'm going to open the meeting for public comment. I do not see any raised hands. Maria, do you see any? Because you have a better view of
No.
participants than I do. Very excellent. Okay, so then with this, I will turn it over to item number 5, review and discussion of technical amendments to articles in the 2023 annual town meeting warrants. And Maria is going to share screen so we can see what it is. And then it's over to Libby and Brian as to walk us through it.
Brian, you want to take the first couple?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So the first technical amendment is to Article 6. The 3 requested changes are highlighted in yellow. The first one was a request from the school department, given the uncertainty with special education, which I know that in previous budget meetings that they have discussed this with you, and the increasing cost of providing those services. A couple of years ago, we did create a special education reserve fund, which would allow the school to utilize those funds if costs were greater than anticipated. After the budget was approved and adopted, Martin, the CFO of the school, had a discussion with me that costs were looking like they might be a little bit higher, and asked if there was any ability for the town to help by potentially making a contribution into the special education reserve fund. I have talked about this with the town manager, and we recommended $450,000 go into that. That would be funded from free cash. DPW, the operating budget has taken on some additional work and charges that were not anticipated, and especially around professional services, given the transition that we've gone through in DPW directors, given the difficulty in hiring and funding all of their difficulty hiring and filling all of the positions, not funding, my apologies. We're recommending $139,000 be taken from their salary line item and transferred into their operating budget. And then the finance committee, the amount of $5,627 is merely the allocation for the printing of the warrant, which was more expensive than we had anticipated. So given the fact that the insurance line is running at a healthy, potentially healthy surplus this year, we're recommending transferring $5,627 into the finance committee operating line to cover that their allocation of the printing of the town meeting warrant. So those are all the changes for Article 6 for the technical amendment. I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Maria, can you stop sharing so I can see the committee members? Thank you. Any questions? Jeremy?
Yeah, $450,000. How does that relate to the actual budget? And is that just a reserve so they have money, or is there a specific use for that? 'Cause that seems like a lot.
It is, but special education is very expensive. They do get some reimbursement from they do get some reimbursement for the state, but it does not cover it all. And that reserve fund would previously we have put 200,000 into it for them in prior years, Jeremy, and that does allow them to utilize it over multiple fiscal years, so that it's not a one-time, or it's not a use it or lose it by the end of this year. It's basically that's their run out projection of what they may need over a period of time. As far as what the exact number in their budget is, I don't have that off the top right at my fingertips, but that was a number that Martin had requested and given to us based on his analysis of where they were now and any changes that may be occurring. Because one thing that we do have to keep in mind, especially with special education, is you could have a student come in this year that we don't have to bear the cost for this year, because if they transfer into the community, but in subsequent years, those are become our sole responsibility. So I think a lot of it may be changes in the dynamics in the population that they were anticipating.
No, I understand that A, it is expensive, and B, that some of it can't be exactly foreseen. But are we seeing a pattern here? If in prior years,
They have, this is
200,000 gets allocated after a budget, and then this year they need 450,000 after a budget?
So the first allocation actually was, I think, 3 years ago, and it was during the budget process. So it was not something that we did after the fact. It was actually during the process. This one certainly maybe after part of the process, but I would, I have complete confidence in the administration and how they manage this. And it certainly was something that was unexpected. And given the fact that we do have the free cash to put into it, the town manager and I felt that it was worthy to attempt to help them to the extent possible.
Other questions?
But
Jill?
I will relay the concern about coming after the budget to them as well.
Thank you, Brian. Oh, good, Jill, you're back on my screen. So did you because you weren't on my screen, so if you had a question, I wouldn't have seen your physical hand raised. You would have had to click the yellow button. So
Well, I guess forgive me for being daft, but like, what's the emergency again? Maybe I
Well, it's not, I don't know that it's an extreme emergency, but the projection is that those costs may exceed what they may get from reimbursement and would divert additional funds in their budget to special education, which would then put a more of a strain on their budget during next fiscal year. So they've asked for some additional help, which we think is granted and warranted based on the circumstances that we understand them to be. So I don't know that there's an extenuating emergency that says there's this many children, but what they're looking at in terms of the level of services and the sophistication of services needed next year may require would require funds in their budget to be utilized that they weren't anticipating. And as I mentioned, given the fact that we had almost $20 million in free cash, we we felt this was appropriate to try to help maintain all the level of services in its entirety in the school budget.
But Brian, how much are they spending on special? What's it, like a $35 million educational budget roughly? And what
It is.
percentage of that is for special needs requirements?
I'd have to try to look it up. If you can give me a couple minutes, I can, or a couple seconds here, I can try to get to that for you. I mean, Madam Chair, given the fact that it's over 4 schools, it's probably going to take me more than 1 minute to get an exact number for you.
Okay,
I'm happy to provide it, but I don't know that I can have an exact number right this instant for you.
okay, okay, thanks, Brian. Peter? Peter, you're muted. Peter, you're muted.
Sorry, Brian, we're obligated to pay this regardless, right?
We are.
Okay, so it's kind of a moot point.
We don't really have any option, and the only option at the end of the day, Peter, to answer that a bit more expounded, would be for them to use resources in their budget that would be for other educational opportunities to cover it. So
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with that, Joanna,
I have just a quick question. So if they don't use it all, Brian, does it just roll? It rolls back to free cash? Is that what
No,
happens,
it
or it
would-
stays in the fund?
it would ultimately stay there as a buffer for future
Okay.
years if they didn't need it all.
Okay, great. So it's kind of like a savings account. Thank you.
other questions for Brian on these 3 line items?
Yep.
Stephen?
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Great. On the DPW, moving from staffing to operations. How are we able to employ that money in operations if we don't have the staff that we anticipated we would have?
A lot of it is related to potentially utilizing additional consultants and some other
Ah.
projects that needed to be done that we authorized them to hopefully proceed with once this is done.
Great, thank you.
other questions from the finance committee? In which case, are we ready for a motion? Right. And the motion you can see is move that the accounts listed below be transferred between the various fiscal year 2023 accounts and expenditures as follows. The items highlighted in yellow, that would be, is someone willing to make that motion?
Motion to adopt.
Okay. Thank you. By roll call. Maria, I need to see the screen, please. Sorry. Thank you. Peter,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Denise, I thank you. Okay. Next one, Brian, please, or Libby, either one, Article 8.
I imagine the town manager will probably fill in if I can't, if there's an issue, but what you have before you in Article 8, Madam Chair, is a request to amend the Article 8 operating expense line for Health and Human Services by $175,000. As you're aware, the chair of the CRC committee, along with the Health and Human Services Director, came before FinCom and asked for an additional allocation of $175,000 due to some identified needs in the community in specific age ranges that they felt were not being met, and felt that there were some particular organizations that may be able to implement programs to do that. They had indicated that it would be a 1-year funding, which would help any particular organizations be able to leverage grant funding to continue those programs. After your meeting with the CRC and the Health and Human Services Director, or Human Services Director, excuse me, they did go to the select board and made the same case and presentation to the board about the need in the community Many of the same concerns from the finance department and town administration were articulated to the select board. However, at the end of the presentation, the select board did vote, I believe it was unanimous, to direct town administration to use all of its efforts to find a way to fund this additional request. So that all being said, what you have before you is a request to increase the Article 8 budget by the $175,000 that was requested by CRC. Changes are highlighted in yellow. And Maria, if you could go down to the bottom for the motion, I would appreciate it for 1 second, please. And you will notice, because this was expected and is expected to be a one-time event, we are recommending that it comes from, be transferred from free cash. I'm happy to entertain any questions relative to this request.
Thank you, Brian. Peter,
So this is the money that we voted down, correct?
It is. We are bringing it forward, Peter, based on the fact that the select board did direct town administration to find a way to find the funding, and that it was important and they felt it should be done, which is why we're first bringing it to you, because ultimately, most likely, this is going to be a motion to amend it on the town floor. And we were hoping that that could potentially be avoided.
Okay.
Brian, can you just go over again, what is the $175,000 to be used for?
They believe that there's a gap in certain age ranges that is not being funded for services. I forget off the top of my head, Jeremy, but I think a lot of it's relative to what has been going on at the schools, and they feel that there are programs and services that some of the island organizations could help implement that would potentially give all of these individuals alternatives that would lead to better outcomes. So they are looking to try to deal with what is, they believe, is a multi-pronged crisis that is not being dealt with.
Peter,
So one of our big complaints about this was they presented it to us with no plan. And it sounds like you're telling me they presented it to the select board with no plan again.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
They presented it that way. I would add that subsequent to that meeting, they have been internally trying to come up with what an RFP would look like, and have had discussions with some of the organizations that most likely would respond to it, to determine the readiness and the speed with which it could be deployed. But is there a hard and fast plan right now? None that I'm aware of still, but I know there's been additional work done on it.
And we had
Joanna
recommended
has-
that they come back to us at special town meeting.
In
With-
November, right?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. So if we vote no again, what does that mean?
I believe the town manager can correct me if I'm wrong or I say anything incorrectly, but it would be my belief that most likely either the chair of the CRC or somebody would hold Article 8 and make a motion to amend the article for this $175,000.
Joanna,
So being the finance committee representative on the CRC, I can tell you that we've met 8 times. There is a comprehensive plan. There is an RFI, an RFP, a PowerPoint presentation, and there has been considerable community involvement from at least 15 organizations, with probably 50 plus invited to participate. And the response has been very positive. Lots of good collaboration has become of it. And the timeline is tight because the goal is to implement something by September 15th. Right, and so that there's a real time, real need addressing of what some of these issues are. I'm happy
Isn't
to.
this, from the
answer
finance
questions.
committee's perspective, isn't this still a pig in a poke? We don't necessarily know what it is that the money's going to be used for, which was the concern last time, as I recall.
I wouldn't characterize it that way, Jeremy, at all. I mean, especially having sat through 8 2-hour meetings inside of the last 5 weeks, I would say that there have been several good ideas flushed out and ways to use the money via the CRC in ways that we have not done before, having sat on this committee for a few years. And I think that it's necessary, and it has really broken down some barriers between different organizations. And I've been impressed with the level of collaboration that I have seen emerge.
But the finance committee as a group, but for your review of this, is the first we've heard of it, and we've seen nothing additive.
Well, I'm not sure how that would have worked. I mean, certainly if you wanted the CRC to come and present what they've done before the town meeting, we could certainly do that. We have a meeting on, I know that Dorothy was planning on speaking about this at the town meeting on Saturday. But yes, I mean, we took very seriously everything that we heard from the finance committee and went back and developed a comprehensive effort, right? That I think is good, solid.
Jill?
Hi, I went to one of the meetings, just so you know, Jeremy, and there was a lot of collaboration. A lot of the groups did show up, and they're talking about ways to address this real crisis at the high school. So while I know it wasn't our first choice as a committee, I feel like we should support the fact that the select board really wants this and thinks that it's urgent. And I think Joanna and the group, having been on the group in past and been the FinCom rep, you know, I really do trust them to pick the right people to do this. And their emphasis is really for the groups to collaborate. So it's not just going to a traditional group and doing their program that they normally do. It's asking them to come forward and maybe partner with another group that they haven't done before. Maybe that's the Boys and Girls Club partnering with one of the traditional CRC groups, but they're really interested in this money going to a specific group of people, but collaboratively, because they know it's a hard ask. So anyway, that was what I observed on Friday, and I appreciated being able to see that.
Thank you, Jill. Other questions or comments? I'd like to make just a basic observation here, which is, you know, when first presented with this, the school didn't ask for it. The people who asked for CRC funding didn't ask to do this from either the marijuana fund or from the general, you know, the typical Article 9 fund. I was not happy, honestly, with the way that this came to us at the very 13th hour. And so I'm happy to hear that a lot of work has been done and there's something more concrete there. I would be extremely reluctant to replay this again next year in the same way, because this was really not acceptable, honestly. And, you know, similar to the airport last year, putting capital things forward to us in front of outside the capital committee. I am not happy when things go outside of what the process is. And this year's CRC stuff was so late coming to us, and it doesn't help us as a community to try to help these organizations when we're doing it on the back of an envelope and quickly. So I'm glad to hear, Joanna and Jill, that, you know, you both are having both been on the committee at once, and Joanna still is, that there is a path forward that's constructive and will actually have a good outcome. I understand that the select board endorsed it, and, you know, there are times when we may divert from what the select board wants to do based on our particular points of view. So I am now open to or amenable to this. Honestly, coming into this meeting today, I was not, and I shared that with Brian before, that if things had not changed from the time we first talked about this, I was definitely not going to be in favor of it. So, but it appears that things have changed since then. So, good. That's it.
Brooke had her hand up, I think.
Oh, Brooke. Thanks, Peter. Brooke?
Yeah, hi, just speaking from where I came at this as a select board member is, I was getting a lot of concern from parents in the community that felt emergent and out of cycle, particularly around some of the issues, the behavioral issues at the schools. And I understand the schools weren't asked about this, and this seems a little convoluted in how it's being arrived at. But I think what was persuasive to me was the amount of outreach that I had as a select board member from concerned parents who wanted really something to be in place in a timely manner for this school year. And really, I think we're seeing some of the seeds that were sown through the isolation of the pandemic in terms of student behavior. And to me, time was of the essence for this. And I too was concerned about how this would play out. I've been on the CRC, and they have really committed to defining the process and encouraging collaboration. And that makes me feel better as well about having supported this recommendation. So I just wanted to share my perspective on why I chose to vote to go outside of the normal process and support this request.
Brooke, did the select board see how the money was going to be spent?
Not at the time we voted on it, no.
Okay,
It was a leap of faith, I will say.
As a matter of process for the finance committee, I understand this is in a sort of an emergency issue, but is it possible for us to get in a small amount of time a better understanding now how this has evolved? And I greatly appreciate that you guys have been convinced, but it seems to me that the finance committee shouldn't really have the information to itself be convinced, because this isn't an insignificant amount of money.
Well, Jeremy, I would say at this point, because the town meeting
I
is,
know.
so the town meeting is Saturday, so being able to have another meeting between now and Saturday, frankly, is not
Okay.
possible. So I hear you and I agree with you. This has been, I have not been happy throughout this whole CRC cycle. Secondly, I don't think we really want to reopen Article 8 on town meeting floor if we can avoid it, because then I would get concerned about other items being cherry picked, and we will spend the entire town meeting on Article 8, potentially. That's, but that wouldn't stop me from saying no to this now if I thought honestly that progress hadn't been made and we were in the same state as when we talked about it on March 9th. And, let's just say next year, this has to be a do better situation, like we said to the airport 2 years ago. And it worked, this past year with the airport. So I'm convinced that the CRC can do better next year with the finance committees and not have these Hail Mary requests, as I am now phrasing it. So, yeah.
motion
but-
to adopt for the kids. That's the only reason.
Okay, is there a second?
Second,
Okay, thank you. By roll call, I'll start with Peter,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Jill,
aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Denise, I. Okay, thanks, Brian. Next one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee.
Next one is zoning, Article 44. Leslie, you want to take this one?
Article 44, there's not a motion printed in the warrant for this one. The planning board had to hold a new public hearing and re-advertise it in order for their motion and the quantum of vote to be 50% in accordance with the state's housing choice legislation. This article revises the parking requirements for duplexes and garage apartments in a variety of districts, and it brings our current parking requirements more in line with the suggestions provided by the state.
So for the finance committee's information, this would be a motion to support or not support the planning board motion. We are not the primary motion on this. So just to remind us of that. Any questions?
Yeah, yes, please.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Leslie, does this say that you can't provide more than 4 parking spaces for certain types of housing? What does the chart say?
Can we get the chart back on the screen, please? I don't have a copy of it handy. Yeah, so for certain duplexes, there would be a maximum parking requirement of 4 spaces. And the idea behind this is, again, the state wants communities to encourage housing production, and they are viewing excessive parking requirements as a barrier to the creation of housing. So that's the perspective that the planning board is coming from in changing these requirements.
You said a maximum number or a minimum number?
A maximum requirement. So somebody could provide more, but they can't be required. You could have 10 bedrooms in a duplex, but you could only be required to provide 4 parking spaces.
Got it, got it.
Correct.
Any other questions? So the motion here would be the finance committee. If it's positive motion, the motion would be finance committee supports the planning board motion.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I think that this is foolhardy. People don't need fewer cars just because you want them to have fewer cars. You're going to have more building per lot area and less parking provided, and the impacts on neighborhoods will be significant. There'll be street parking where it shouldn't exist. This exists just about everywhere where you see duplexes. Along Old South Road, along Essex Road. This is going to be a problem. Developers aren't going to provide more parking than they have to. So reducing these requirements, maybe you get a few more bedrooms. You're not getting more dwellings because they're duplexes. So that's not what we're talking about, but we're adding bedrooms and taking away parking. And I don't think our transportation infrastructure can support it. So I think it's a bad idea.
And do we have any sense in the macro, how many properties or how many extra bedrooms and how fewer parking this might be?
That's not a number that we can provide.
So what's the impetus for people putting this forward? They just want to build more bedrooms?
It's a planning board sponsored article, and the direction that towns are receiving from the state is to reduce parking, to allow different types of housing units in different locations, to encourage more multifamily style housing. And the planning board is following that direction by putting this article forward.
So prior to this, it was 1 bedroom, 1 parking space?
Correct. In
I think
most
so. It
areas,
was
in
definitely
most areas.
0.75 spaces per bedroom, but it varies by district, I think. I don't
Yeah,
have.
most of them look like they were 1 bedroom, 1 parking space.
Mhm. I mean, in an R5, are you going to have 10 bedrooms in a duplex?
Why not?
I don't know the answer to that, Stephen. I'm asking you.
I don't see why not. I mean, you can be on sewer. A lot of R5 is sewer, maybe all of it. You can have 3 levels, basement, ground, 2nd floor. I mean, that's usually the hang up when people are trying to plan duplexes is how many parking spaces do I have to provide? So now that's less of an issue. 4 spaces is a significantly less space than 6. And now it's 4 spaces and I don't have to provide these extra parking spaces. So now maybe I'll, instead of just doing the 6 bedrooms I was going to, now I'll do 8. And 8 bedrooms is going to require many more than 4 cars of parking. Some bedrooms have, some bedrooms require 2 cars.
And some require none.
And that's why on average, 1 has worked okay. I don't even think it works in a lot of neighborhoods.
Mm.
But, you know, I don't think we've made the requisite improvements in our transportation infrastructure to support something like this.
Okay, Brooke?
So some of the context for this is the housing choice legislation, and Nantucket does qualify as a housing choice community. And part of the reason we do qualify for that is because of the things that we've done in zoning and other areas that allow us to qualify. And it does give us a leg up in LIHTC financing for affordable housing projects and other advantages of being a compliant housing choice community. So I would imagine that was the impetus for the planning board to bring this forward.
Well, if this provides a mix shift, if I might characterize that, on the affordable housing metrics, what will this then create? If this is adopted, does it allow 10 more, 100 more? You know, what's the macro effect of affordable housing that this mix shift would allow?
So it brings down to some extent development costs for deed restricted affordable units and allows for the creation of more multifamily units across the island, of which we have a very short supply in the overall housing landscape. So,
But we don't know what the specific numbers might be on any of this, or bracketing
No.
it.
No.
So it's sort of an open-ended concept.
Well,
I think
Jeremy,
I'm-
you don't know, sorry, Denise, I need to go through, sorry.
Okay, Jill, and then Leslie, I'll
Sure.
come to you, Jill, just in case, and then Megan.
Yeah.
So Jill,
The
Leslie-
problem, Jeremy, you changed the rule and you don't know if people are going to take advantage of it or not, but
Mhm.
they want to be eligible. We as a community want to be eligible is what I'm hearing them say. So that we can do that, so that if we meet the state's requirements, then we are eligible for more funding. So that we're seeing is expanding, I think, our access to affordable housing. But how many people do it? You don't know.
It's all in the future. So
Leslie, you were next up. You're muted.
Jill pretty much said what I was going to say, so I'm good. Thanks, Jill.
Jill's channeling Leslie. That's pretty cool. Megan, are you going to channel Jill and Leslie?
I'm honored, okay.
No, I was just gonna bring up one more point that the planning board had discussed, that changing this brings it more in line with the single family requirements, where only usually one space is required per unit. So duplex could be seen as excessive when it's assessed per bedroom.
Thank you. Stephen, you had your
So-
hand as well.
So the planning board has latitude to waive parking requirements anyway. So,
By special permit.
right, and that's what these are. Right, so planning board has the ability to waive any parking requirement anywhere at any time. So this isn't necessary. This just reduces the ability for the planning board to require parking. They can't ask for more than 4, even if they think it's appropriate. This does more to restrict the ability of the planning board to review each individual project and each site than it does to give them latitude.
So why would they take away their ability to regulate?
I don't know.
Unless it
Leslie?
was to allow the community to, down the road, get more affordable housing.
now let's put it a different way. If this had been passed, would we have had more housing built last year because of this?
I do think it's likely that you will see more bedrooms. You won't see more units,
Right,
but you'll see more bedrooms.
I agree with
Okay.
that.
But practically speaking, bedrooms do equal cars.
Or electric bikes.
True.
Maybe at some point in the future. I don't think that that's what's borne out right now.
Okay, Jill?
Well, it just sounds like you gotta decide if you're doing this for the affordable housing aspect of it. I mean,
There's nothing about this that says affordable. This isn't for deed restriction properties. This is for every property. If it
Mhm.
said for properties that meet the Shire list requirements, and for those properties, you get, to provide less parking because you're producing housing that's desperately needed. that's
okay,
different than
employee
what this
housing, what's
says.
wrong with employee housing now,
There's
Stephen?
nothing wrong with employee housing, but when we have parking requirements for businesses and businesses can't provide it for their employers, the planning board requires things like bus passes or bike racks, and that's not contemplated here. So the planning board loses a tool that they otherwise would have had in their arsenal.
So based on this discussion, is there a desire to change the motion that's currently open? Which is the Finance Committee supports the Planning Board motion.
I move to stay the way we are.
I second.
Okay. Are we ready to take a vote on that then? Seeing nobody's shaking their head no, I'm just going to go Peter Schaefer,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
okay, Jill,
Aye.
Stephen,
No.
okay, Joanna,
Aye.
Denise, aye. Okay, that's the motion. Next one, Leslie, I think is you as well.
Technical amendment to Article 47. This is a zoning map change. One Salrose Road was shown on the map, but it was omitted from the property listing. So the technical amendment is to add that property to the motion.
Any discussion from, any questions from the Finance Committee? Would somebody want to offer a motion?
Move to accept the planning board's recommendation.
Okay, thank
Second.
you. Thank you. Any discussion on that? Seeing none. Peter,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Joanna.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And then the next one is actually, I will talk to this. So when we discussed this during our deliberations, we had a date of town meeting 2024. In subsequent discussions with town administration, they laid out the step-by-step process that it would take to form a committee, public hearings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we can use the STR work group as an example, which was took May to September to get it started because of following all the correct steps. So therefore, there was I actually am proposing, which is odd, of course, that the new recommendation for instead of number 4, we say that it shall complete its work and submit an article for either an annual or special town meeting, which, if passed, may enable the transition to town council structure. The timing of the submission is dependent on the execution of all the necessary steps, including appointing the committee, public hearings, and writing of the article. I felt that this would be helpful in that it doesn't mean it couldn't be at our annual town meeting 2024. It doesn't preclude it from being submitted then. However, to do the right work on something as important as this, I felt that it shouldn't be handicapped by annual town meeting 2024. So I suggested this wording to Libby, who then changed her check with John Giorgio, and we can change it if you want. And that's where we are. That's why we have this amendment to this article, Article 81. So Maria, if I can see the committee, please. Thank you. Any comments from the committee?
Who was the sponsor of 81?
This one's Curtis Barnes.
And he's supportive of this?
I did not run it by Curtis, Stephen, because I wasn't sure we were going to approve it. So therefore, I was going to wait to see if the Finance Committee approved it. If the Finance Committee approved it, I was going to tell Curtis that we gave him some more working time. So versus asking him if, I just felt it was if we didn't approve it, then there's no sense in telling Curtis we are considering this.
We should
Potentially.
Definitely approve this based on the short-term rental committee. I mean, and this is perhaps even more important, so.
I mean, it doesn't-
Totally agree.
It doesn't preclude having an article ready for 2024. So there still could be one ready for then. There's no, this doesn't say it can't be. It just doesn't have a ending time.
Aren't you just creating a process scaffolding, which is a good thing?
I would have hoped so, but you know.
So what happens if we don't change the language and they don't have anything prepared for annual town meeting 2024?
They'll ask for an extension, just like we did.
I think it sends a not great message to come to town meeting and we have to strike through the language that we have now and say, or at any other point.
Okay, Libby? one way
I
or-
was just gonna mention, it's virtually impossible that there would be an article ready for the 2024 town meeting between getting the committee appointed, which like Denise said, is not gonna take 5 minutes after town meeting, it's gonna take a while. Getting them to meet, have the necessary public hearings and have an article completely ready to go by January. Never mind that I have no idea at this moment who is going to facilitate this committee. It's just completely unrealistic timeline, but
One of the candidates for the select board said he could have solved the short-term rental thing in 2 hours. So,
I nominate him to take over this group.
you don't want him, trust me.
Okay, let's not go there on a public meeting, please.
No.
I'm
Okay.
getting punchy.
So, I mean, Stephen, I understand your point completely. And I was balancing it against what's realistic and feasible and would allow for the right work versus, you know, so if the missing the deadline and then asking for an extension is a preferred approach from this committee, then we don't make this amendment. I'm not wedded to this in the sense that, you know, this isn't a hill I need to die on. At the same time, I try to make it something that would be, I like things that can get done. So, and I don't have any expectation it would be done for 2024 annual town meeting. So no matter how much pressure we put on them to get it done. But I'm also okay if everybody says, you know what, just leave it as it is and we don't have the technical amendment. So I have, honestly, no pony in this race. Jill,
I make a motion to adopt.
Second,
Joanna, did you want to say something?
No, I agree. I mean, I think it's not realistic to think that this is going to get done by the 2024 town meeting. So let's do it.
Further discussions on the motion?
Yeah, I don't think there's any effect of the suggestion that it needs to come back for 2024 anyway. So I think this messaging is not good, and I think the sponsor should have been consulted.
Noted. Okay, thank you. So, and do you feel strongly enough about that, that you would like to persuade your fellow committee members to change the motion that's on the table?
No, I care not that much about it. I will vote no, but people can vote however they please.
Okay, thank you. So Peter,
Yeah. Aye.
Jeremy,
aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Stephen?
No.
Okay, Denise, I thank you. Okay, that's the end of the technical amendments. And as a follow-up point, I will obviously share this with Mr. Barnes. If on the day he wants to go back to his original 2024, of course he can. So there's no reason he couldn't do that on the floor of town meeting. So there you go. With that, committee reports, I think the only active committee, well, Joanna, obviously there's an active committee with, and Joanna's not there. Peter,
Yeah, we have a meeting on Thursday that's going to be from 10 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. To basically put together a proposal for the second town meeting. Whether we'll get there or not remains to be seen. But we will also get our first download and dump of stats or data that we haven't had so far, other than the misleading stuff from Granicus. We will have the people that we hired for our group present. So that's all going to be this Thursday, open to the public. It's going to be, I think it's at the community building, isn't it, Libby? You know? The short-term rental all-day meeting, isn't it? Is it?
Does anybody know? Megan, do you know? Yes, she says yes.
Yeah, okay. So open to the public, please join us.
And I think I said it was okay for you to go get some food. You're welcome.
Yes, and thank you so much, and thanks Brooke, wherever she is.
Okay. And Joanna, you kind of gave us a CRC update. Did you want to add anything else?
No, but if anybody, so we have a meeting on Friday, let me tell you, no, Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock. At that point, we will finalize the RFI and this PowerPoint presentation that we've been working on. And so if anybody wants to see that after Dorothy approves it, I think that she'd be happy to share it with you.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee reports? I don't think there's any other active committees right now. In which case, is there any other business? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Leslie, Megan, thank you for being here. Obviously, Brooke, same to you. Brian, Maria, Libby, as always. And so Peter, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, no, we have it.
Oh,
Second.
we had, oh, yeah.
I need
aye.
an
Aye,
aye.
aye.
Thank you. Jeremy,
Aye.
Jill.
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Denise, aye. Now, Libby, quick question. The moderators conference, FinCom can come if it wants to. I mean, I'm going to go, but I don't know that anybody else from FinCom has to go unless they're wanting to go, where Sarah talks us through how Saturday will work together with Libby. So is that correct, Libby?
Yep, and we're gonna make her aware of the technical amendments. She has them. And they didn't change today. So she'll just, as she goes through each article, she'll just mention which ones have a technical amendment, and if there's any other last minute stuff that might be out there, she'll let us know, or where to let her know.
Okay, thank you. So it's up to all of you if you want to attend that or not, which it starts in 5 minutes. So, all right, everybody, thank you. Thanks, Maria.
See you Saturday.
See you Saturday.